Bro, I just want to be rich. Like, I want to be like, I don't like talking about my failures too much. I've raised 7 funds for 7 individual projects throughout my real estate life. And then COVID hit and it was like a nightmare scenario. So everything happens for a reason, but you gotta be willing and open to learn.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of More Than a Sale, where it's not just about the successes, it's about the failures, the heartbreaks, the setbacks to get to where you are today. And today I have one.
Basem Hanna.
Basem Hanna.
Make a round of applause to Basem Hanna.
He's a developer. He sold his cannabis company for tens of millions of dollars. He has a company that he run, Almega Co. He is a Egyptian Vin Diesel.
Basem, welcome to More Than a Sale.
Thanks, Rod. Thanks for having me.
How does that feel when people tell you you're like the Egyptian Vin Diesel, man?
Listen, Fast and the Furious is my favorite movie franchise, so I take it as a huge compliment. What I really cared about was achieving a goal, and my next goal is now to make this bigger than me, not just about me. Right after I got all that money, I actually went through depression. I've been chasing only money for so long. Now what? Like, why am I not like the happiest person in the world? I cried on the phone. I had a come to Jesus moment where I'm like, you're done, buddy. And I just felt like a complete failure.
How does someone go through that moment, and what do you do to pick yourself back up and recover from something like that?
A big part of the motivation and why I do what I do now, it can't just be about me. If I did not learn that then, when I was doing a $15 million project, I would be so scared to learn it. $200 million projects or $700 million projects, which is what we're doing. And we're still going through a shitty market. Again, even that mistake was a blessing from God, and you've got to take responsibility.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of More Than a Sale, where it's not just about the successes, it's about the failures, the heartbreaks, the setbacks to get to where you are today. And today I have one such individual, Basem Hanna. He's a developer. He sold his cannabis company for tens of millions of dollars. He has a company that he runs, Almega Co. And not only that, he's the Egyptian Vin Diesel. Basem, welcome to More Than a Sale.
Thanks, Rod. Thanks for having me.
How does that feel when people tell you you're like the Egyptian Vin Diesel, man?
Listen, Fast and the Furious is my favorite movie franchise, so I take it as a huge compliment.
That's incredible. Look,
and I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
And I love that about you. And today our audience and our viewers are going to get a chance to watch and listen and hear your story, because you have an incredible one. Now, we've been friends for a while, and not only are you a great all-around guy, a fun individual, but you're incredibly smart, and I get a chance to learn a lot from you as well when we sit down. And you're making some big moves and big splashes in the industry, and today our viewers and our listeners are going to get a chance to hear that. First off, tell me about this cannabis company of yours, because you sold this for like tens of millions of dollars. It was an 8-figure exit, and you're all over the news. So tell me about that. How did that happen? Tell me about how the company got started. Break it down for me.
Before cannabis, I was in real estate. I worked at a couple development shops at First Capital Realty doing commercial real estate, and then I worked at the Rose Corporation, where I was doing more real estate private equity investments. And then I started my own real estate business in 2011 when I was 26. And I'll explain the genesis of that in a little bit. But for the purpose of the cannabis story, I started buying apartment buildings in 2012, 2013. And then I bought an old industrial building in 2013 that I wanted to convert into self-storage. The day I closed on the building, my lawyers took me out for dinner, like a closing dinner. And I was just like shooting the shit with them. And I'm like, hey, what does your husband do for a living? And she's like, oh, he just quit his job and he's getting into medical cannabis. This is like September 2013.
Okay.
I'm like, medical cannabis. I'm like, and I, at the time, like, I'm a big weed guy, and I was like, I'm an avid smoker. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this is like being the Bacardi or Smirnoff family at the legalization of, or at the end of prohibition for alcohol. That's the way I interpreted the opportunity in my mind. And so for those that don't know, Canada was the first country to federally legalize both medicinal and recreational cannabis. So we were at the forefront. So I'm like, man, if we get it right here, we could build this into like this crazy company. And I was just like, I was like slightly delusional, but I saw the opportunity. So I took that industrial building that I bought with my investors, and I convinced them, I'm like, hey guys, instead of doing self-storage, which is what we were gonna do, let me rent it from you. And I wanted to make it into a medical cannabis facility. Because they believed in me, they reluctantly said yes. And then from 2014 to 2018, we ended up starting, myself and my 2 co-founders, ended up building one of what is now the largest global cannabis companies. It's publicly traded on the TSX. It operates in Canada, the US,
What is the name of this company?
It's called TerraSend.
Okay.
It probably does, like, I think today, and I would love to take credit for this, but it's not me alone by no means. It's actually the team that we sold it to that did a lot of the revenue growth.
Yeah.
But it does like $350 million US in revenue a year. And it's got amazing profit margins. It's got over $1 billion valuation. It's like top 3 global cannabis company.
What's it like to be at the start of medical cannabis in Canada and then build out this company? Did you kind of foreseeing this to happen, or was it sort of like, this is fun, this is what I'm passionate about, and I'm going to continue to do this?
We got into it for financial reasons. Okay. Like that was for sure, like business reasons.
Yeah.
I think the reason that we were successful was we had a lot of passion.
Got it.
Everything that we were doing was related to, it's a bit of a running joke. Like we like weed, so like it's cool to have a weed company, but that wasn't it. And honestly, you know this about me, I stopped smoking weed this year.
Yes, you made an announcement on social media, and a formal one, and you and I had a conversation about that as well.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that because that's a critical component, because it's been a big part of your life, and for you to finally let go of it, it must have been a big deal. But coming back to the company.
Yeah, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that. And coming back to the company. So you're building this company out. What were some of the challenges and struggles that you had? What were you up against? Let me ask you that.
Okay. You're brown like me, so you understand this. Different brown, but same really. Our parents come from like the same mentality. Like, try to convince your parents or the general community. I come from an Egyptian community, that I'm going to leave my real estate gig and I'm going to get into weed. Yeah. Right. Like, and so the first real challenge that we got was people taking us seriously, right? I was 28 when I started this. I'm like, hey, I'm going to raise tens of millions of dollars to start a weed company on legalization that has yet to be finalized. And we're going to be at the forefront of this thing. And so like just getting general acceptance from people was both because of our age and because of the industry, more importantly, the industry that we were in, was certainly the biggest challenge by far. Like, getting people to give you money for something like that is not easy.
So what's it like when you ask for money on a very high level?
Yeah.
And imagine asking your friend for $1,000 or $1,500. There's going to be a higher level of reluctancy. But for you, when you're asking for that much money, how does that process look like to ask for that much money? Like, where do you go? Who do you approach? Are you meeting with institutionalizations and financial companies? Like, how does it work?
So I'll answer one question first. So how did we go about doing it?
Yeah.
We knew that we were not oblivious to what we were asking people. We're like, hey, we need, like, our first round was $6 million to build out phase 1 of our facility. And we're doing it in the medical cannabis space. So we're like, the legislation isn't broadly known. So we knew that the first thing that we had to do was change people's narrative and give them education.
Yeah.
We spent a significant amount of time setting up for the pitch. So we wrote a very, very robust business plan that answered almost every single question, not almost, every single question that we could think of that would potentially be asked by a skeptical person, by an educated person, by whatever. We baked it into one document. So if you took the time, you would understand our business. And if you read that document, you would be a believer. But more importantly, if we were sitting in front of you and you had a question, I could flip to page 10 of 50 or 60 and be like, oh, you have a question about the market size, whatever. Well, here it is. Oh, you have a question about competitors. Well, here it is. Oh, you have a question about legalization. Well, here's the regs. We were like putting out fires, and we became experts at putting out fires on the spot. Right. So like, if I was lucky enough to get you to have a meeting with me to seriously consider investing in medical cannabis at that time, I was like, I can't leave that meeting without at least making sure that I have all the answers to your questions.
Got it.
So like, the prep was probably like our biggest tool or biggest feature, just getting people over the hump, like seeing the vision. And we did a lot of comparisons of prohibition of alcohol in the 1920s and 30s to prohibition of cannabis in the early 2010s. And that helped us a lot because people could visualize, like you're saying, names like Bacardi and Smirnoff, and they're like, I know those names, I've had that. And then we're like, well, listen, you could be at the forefront of it with us if you believe, you have to believe in the industry that it's going to be legalized. But that was easy because we could point to government websites that said, yes, we are going to legalize medical in 2014. We are going to legalize recreational in 2017. So we had good data points with us. And then it was just about being a good salesperson at that point.
What's your relationship like with cannabis? When's the first time you ever had a joint or the first time you ever smoked?
I mean, this is, okay, to the camera and anybody listening, especially if you're under 25, it is not good to smoke cannabis before your brain fully develops. It has long-term effects that no matter how hard you try to avoid or whatever, it lingers. So the more you do it young, the worse it is for you. That being said, the first time I smoked weed was probably in high school. I used to do it like once in a blue moon back then, but then I got into university and it became a more consistent companion in my life. You know, you go to a boring lecture and like you like spark before, or you're like on the GO train home or whatever, or you're at a party. Like there was always a reason to do it. So it became a bit more stable or consistent in my life. And then as we started getting older and partying, it was more like after the bar, like the after party always had weed involved. And then I got married and that all kind of slowed down. TerraSend happened, and being like the CEO and founder of a company in the weed space, meeting other individuals who are founders and CEOs of weed companies at this very like nascent stage, like before all of the big executives came into weed, it was a bunch of like passionate entrepreneurs or former like users that wanted to be at the beginning. So every meeting would start and end with a joint, right?
Okay, incredible. I was going to ask you that. Okay.
Yeah, like we were like,
so would it be weird?
High all the time.
So,
like,
so would it be weird if you didn't smoke? If you were part of the exec team, or you're trying to be in the space?
Not for us. Like we had people on our team who didn't smoke, and like our QA person at the time was a very religious, like
anti-smoking,
anti-drinking. She's a vegetarian. Like she's not like that wasn't her life. Like she's like a middle-aged woman. That wasn't a. But like when we go meet other people, we're trying to do collaborations. It was almost like a test. Like you go into the room, you're like, you want to spark up? And if this guy said no, you'd be like, well, you know, do I really want to do business with this person?
It's like anything, right? Like, hey, let's have a drink together and let's talk some business.
Yeah.
Hey, why don't we meet for dinner? And then you're having a few drinks. And that's a way of leveling with the other person and kind of
back then.
Even now it happens. If you think about it, like, hey, let's discuss this over drinks. And it allows you to level up with the person. And you order a
soda water, people are like,
exactly.
Who's this guy? Yeah.
Who's this guy? And I used to think that for the longest time.
Yeah. That's self-confidence. So that's more like my own personal insecurity.
Yeah.
Because thinking back, like I used to think I could never say no.
Yeah.
But now I'm just like, you get older and you're just like, buddy, like you like me for who I am and what we can do together. Not that like I'm going to be your like drinking or smoking buddy.
That's me now. So let me ask you this. Before putting out that post that you put on social media, did you try to quit in the past before, you know, during the times of when you're running and operating the company? Did you realize that, you know what, it's become a thing where it may not lead to positivity down the road for me? Did you ever foresee it, or you're like, no, this is just part of my life and it's okay, it's acceptable?
Again, I don't want to promote bad things on us.
You're not promoting anything bad. I just want to hear your thoughts.
So I was a very functional high. Like it never hit me the way that like I was never like, dude, where's my car high, where I was like sitting in a parked car thinking that I was driving. Like I was not that. I could smoke and go into a meeting and like be functional. And like also I used to smoke a lot. So my cannabinoid receptors were very like dull or like numbed. You know, like if you drink every day, a shot of alcohol is not going to hurt you, or is not going to affect you, like for sobriety purposes. I'm sure there's health negative consequences. Cannabis was the same thing with me. It wasn't that like I was pretty functional, and it was more for me than anything else. I used to take for Lent. I used to stop smoking. My protection mechanism was always don't smoke during Lent. Give yourself a break.
Got it.
But like the day Lent was over, I was like, give me all. I'm back to where I was. Like it wasn't. I never once tried to quit because I didn't want to. This year, I woke up and like for New Year's, I usually write my resolutions down, and one of them was that I wanted to get in shape, and I knew that like I'm a big munchies guy. Like after I smoke weed, I'm like a human garbage disposal system. So I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I care more about my fitness and my health and my life. Like I'm 38. When I get to 40, I don't want to be, I don't want to be like a fat slob. I don't want to have a dad bod. So like I need to get on it now.
And I've seen a massive difference from the last time we were at your birthday party to now. You're you know, you are the Egyptian Vin Diesel now officially.
I will say this because of it's like I hit like my lifetime quota of smoking. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm done. I'm happy with it. It's not to say I won't do it on vacation or like special occasion or whatever, but it is not a part of my day-to-day life anymore.
I've had a chance to meet some incredibly successful people like yourself. They're all recreational smokers. If you asked me 10 years ago, or I would say, you know, even 15 years ago, it would be like, oh, you smoke?
Yeah.
Or you pick it. You know, it was one of those things where you're judged if you did it.
Yeah.
You know, and you'd be shunned from society, or you're considered a certain thing. Now, and it's so weird. Like, they were human before they smoked. There were the same people that before they smoked. They're the same people now. It's just that it's legalized now, and it's more acceptable, I guess, if you may say so, from a society perspective.
Yep.
You know, the judgment is just somehow it's gone away. It's like during the time when, you know, you're being forced to take COVID shots.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have one, stay away, you know, you're an alien.
Blacklisted, yeah. I get why, because like generally I think it's not the thing that they're doing, it's the fact that they're breaking the rules, probably. I think we're probably a few years away from like psilocybin being, like mushrooms and all, like LSD and all that stuff being legalized. I'm curious to see how the world starts looking at people that do shrooms and all that stuff, and like places like Portugal where like everything is legal.
Unless you're going to Portugal next month. Okay, interesting.
I wonder why. Yeah.
The whole world's going to be a happy place now, you know, with all these takes. I want to move on, Basem, to your childhood and growing up. And, you know, you mentioned your family, and especially growing up in a brown family. What were your parents like? You know, tell me a little bit about your childhood. How did you grow up? Were they strict with you? What was taught to you at a young age? What did they enforce on you? You know, what were you allowed to do? Like, kind of share with me a little bit about your childhood.
Sure. I am a Coptic Christian Egyptian.
Yeah.
My family moved here when I was 5 years old. My mom back home was a doctor and my dad is an engineer. As most immigrants know when they come here, or when they come with their parents, Canada has very strict equivalency or licensing rules. So for the first like 8-9 years of us moving here, my parents were working odds and ends jobs. We didn't have a lot of money. We definitely had enough. Like my parents, I never felt like we were poor, but also when you're a kid, you don't notice or care.
Yeah.
We had a lot of love in our house. Our family is very attached to our community.
Right.
Like my parents, we didn't have money for sports or anything like that. And my parents were working very full-time, like odds and ends jobs, and studying to become, like my mom is now a doctor again. She had to do like 8 years of studying to do her equivalency again. My dad's similar. And they do that like they come home from their jobs and they either wake up early or stay up late to do the studying. That imprints on you as a kid. Like you don't realize it, but they taught me hard work by example. And the other half of my life was spent at church, which was basically my community center / babysitting service, right? Like my parents would drop me off at 6 p.m. on a Thursday and basically pick me up on Sunday evening, right? And it was the best. So like my closest friends are from that community, or my oldest friends are from that community. And that's just generally the way I grew up. That has a big impact on me for two reasons. One, like I said, watching your parents struggle gives you drive and motivation that you just don't have if you've never seen it or you've never been a part of it. And I think that anybody that's been in that circumstance, yourself included, probably knows that.
And would you say that, did you always want to be an entrepreneur, or you felt that during that time of your childhood that entrepreneurship is sort of instilled in you and you're like, this is the path?
Bro, I just want to be rich. Like I want to be like,
I just wanted money.
I grew up in a life where I was always looking at others and being like, I want that. I love that. I can't have this. It like built hunger, fire, and like a lot of like, oh, you know, like the kid looking from the window at like the people inside having fun. That's kind of like the life that I felt I had. It maybe probably wasn't true, but in my mind, that's like the narrative that got built up. So like when I got the opportunity to want to be something, I'm like, I want to be the richest person in the room. And I started like doing my homework and I'm like, the richest people I know are business people, like specifically real estate business people, but like consistent wealth generation comes from like owning your own business, being the boss, doing whatever. So that was like, to me, I knew that what I wanted to do at an early age.
And you know what I've noticed about you, because I relate a lot to your story. It's sort of like, you know, there's money in the house, but at the same time, there's lots of conversation about money all the time, you know? And it's like, there is money, but
awkward conversation.
Awkward conversation about money. It's like we have money, but we don't have money. You know, the challenges of grinding, working, and it's always, and you're growing up in that environment. And you're like, man, I just want to change it. I want to stop having these conversations. I want to just talk about other things altogether, and the fact of how hard we have to work and how we have to save and how we have to do this and that. It's the same brown household conversation.
I like, and the thing is, like, to the second thing, you're like, what did my childhood teach me, or like, what did I learn from my childhood? So working hard and wanting it more, like that hustle, I learned in that environment for sure. But the second and almost equally important thing, and probably the single biggest reason for my success, was the community, right? Like the people around you and people boosting other people. I know that in our old school community, I don't think that exists right now. It was always like, I don't trust my fellow Coptic, Christian, Egyptian, Indian, whatever, like whatever community you come from, because it's like me versus them. That's kind of like our parents' mentality.
Back home, because in our countries, that's exactly what happened. You don't know who's going to steal from you or trick you or...
That's bullshit though.
Yeah.
That's such, it's almost like outsiders put that on you to like keep the masses down, right? I learned, and And especially as I got older, is like the community is my source of strength, you know? And yeah, it started off as the Coptic Christian community, but then it became like the Egyptian community, then it became like my Mississauga community. Then it's now become like TerraSend took me to a whole different stratosphere of like knowing people and meeting people and having good relationships. But now I'm just like anybody that knows anybody, especially in the multicultural environment that Canada is, which is beautiful, that we always discount, that is a massive source of strength. And it is the way that people like us can level up, not just one generation or two, like we can take it from not having anything to being like leaders, not just in our internal communities, but leaders amongst Canadians and amongst global professionals. And if you truly believe that and you use that power as you're going up to also bring your community up with you, because if by whatever like God or whatever higher power you believe in, like chooses you to be that representative, it is your obligation to give back and to like.
You actually taught this to me. You don't know it, but you taught it. That's one thing I learned from you. And when that was the first time we met and you were talking about this big vision of yours, your big goal of yours, and I'm listening, and I drove back and I didn't listen to music. It was a silent drive back for me, and I was just processing everything that you were telling me. I said, I need to hang around more with this individual. You know, I need to be.
I felt the same way.
You know, and you blew my mind a bit because you were talking about things far greater than the average person talks about. It wasn't even about making money. It was about the big goal of achieving great things together. And that blew me completely away. And so I want to follow through with my question is, what is the pressure like of running a company like TerraSend, running a family, working on yourself, working on your business and your goals and your dreams? You're a driven individual, you know, and anyone that ever meets you, one thing that is so special about you that I like, or maybe I'm just a little bit biased because I really like you as a human being, is you, and I got a chance to witness this at your birthday party as well. You had a special relationship with each person in that room that was there in their own accordance, in their own different facet of life, where you had touched them or you were there for them at that point. What's the pressure like of being this man? What's the pressure like of being this human being? Were you always like this?
That's not pressure to me. That's joy. Like I don't, so yes, I think I was always like this. I love being social and I'm naturally a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Like if I go into a room and there's 100 people there and there's one person sitting by themselves, I'm going to that person. Right. Like that's just naturally my, like, cause everybody else is good and that person needs love. Right. Or at least I want to check to make sure that they're okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't see it as that part of it. I don't see as pressure. If you give me your money or I am responsible for you in some way, then I have massive pressure, but I take that with pride. And I like to have with me, I know that I'm going to try my best and I will go down swinging. And if I would rather die than fail, not to say that I haven't failed, because I failed and I've failed in big ways, but I squeeze every ounce of juice out of that thing before it's done. And if it's done, then I take responsibility for it, whether good or bad. So I think that's just part of the way that God made me, but there are moments where I feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulder, but it's related to investments and my work. When it comes to social stuff, I love that, man. I live for that. The reason that my birthday party is like that, just for the people, I basically, if I've ever met you in my life, you are invited to my birthday, and I want it to be bigger and bigger every year. Eventually we will have a music festival, but
yeah, I think we're headed there. There were fireworks, there were crazy amount of things happening at this. Anyways, you have to be invited to witness it yourself. Let's not tell anybody.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. You spoke about failures, you spoke about setbacks, you spoke about a bunch of stuff about, having that pressure of carrying someone's investment. Tell me about a failure. Tell me about a setback. Tell me about something that really got you down and you were like, man, I don't know how this happened.
Okay. Don't like talking about my failures too much, but it's important to remember them. I've raised 7 funds for 7 individual projects throughout my real estate life, plus the one cannabis journey that I did. My 5th fund, so I just finished TerraSend. My ego was like my head couldn't fit through most doors because I thought I was king shit and I wasn't paying attention. It was 2018. The market was booming. COVID hadn't happened yet, whatever. And I bought this piece of real estate on assumptions that I probably should have stress tested more. And that eventually we bought it, we renovated, and we were supposed to rent it out for more than we bought it for. And the plan was going well. And we had some pre-signed leases and it was a commercial property on College in Ossington. And COVID hit, and COVID completely sank our business model. All of a sudden, something that we thought was worth, let's say $15 million when it was completed in new world, street front retail doesn't rent for what it used to. The world hasn't recovered. And I think to this day, the world hasn't recovered to those values. So all of our equity got washed away. And more than that, I had personally guaranteed the loan, and we'd over levered the property in comparison to what its new value was. And that loan got called, and it was like a nightmare scenario. So I was personally on the hook for this thing. I had a bunch of pissed off investors, and I just felt like a complete failure all around. Like this was my first, and thank God, only fuck up to this point, but it was big.
So now you have to make those calls to those investors.
Yeah.
You had to do it. Tell me about that.
So again, this is part of like taking responsibility. I had a come to Jesus moment where I'm like, you're done, buddy. Like there's no amount of finessing. There's no amount of like dealing. Like I tried to like pull a rabbit out of a hat in a million different ways, structure deals with tenants so that they could get some equity ownership so that we could save our money, blah, blah, blah. It just all wasn't going to work out. And it felt like there's a certain point where you feel like you're throwing, like it's a sunk cost and you're throwing new good money in after bad money that's gone. So I pick up the phone and I call my first investor, very seasoned real estate guy. And like, he did not mince words with me. He's like, Basem, you know what was wrong here is that you took your eyes off the prize. You fucked up. And then literally like we had like 15 investors in that fund. Every single person, I don't want to say took their pound of flesh because they deserved to, I needed to hear that and they deserved to tell that to me. But I had a version of that conversation 15 times. I cried on the phone, like not that they would see it, but like, I'm like, we were in COVID, right? So like no one was seeing anybody, but like, they're literally like, they're telling me things that are like breaking me down. Like they are breaking my person, right? But I needed to hear that stuff. And it was just like, yeah, you know what? We heard this. And like, now that this has all come to light, you did this wrong and you should have done this better. And you should have done this. And the way you're communicating it is this and this and that. And it was like, I kept getting like stabbed in the heart, but it was like self-inflicted because I took responsibility for these people money. I took them down this journey and I didn't deliver results, and you have to own it. Like in retrospect, like it's been 2 years or 2.5 years since that's happened, since we've had those conversations. I'm still dealing with those relationships. Like they're still like, they'll never be the same. You know, like we have business that we still do together and we have to see those funds through to completion. Do I expect those people to come back to me and invest with me? I'm like, I'm not sure, but I can't be upset if they don't, you know? So like, it was very, very hard life lesson to learn. It was a very hard business lesson to learn. I don't think there's a day in my life since that happened where I don't remember that, but I gained so much positive from it too. It's worth the pain, but I would trade it all away if I could. And I don't want to say this because it sounds like bullshit, but there will come a day where I will make it right. Like I know that. I carry it in my mind. I owe.
How does someone go through that moment and what do you do to pick yourself back up and recover from something like that?
There was like a month where I was like, I'm done. I'm like, I've already made a lot of money. I could literally retire. And I like a big part of the motivation and what I do now, especially post TerraSand, is because it can't just be about me. Like I said before, if God gives you gifts or God gives you a blessing and you don't share it, that is selfish, right? So a lot of the reason why I do what I do now is because I want to bring my community up. I don't want the Egyptian community or the broader community to like the immigrant community to not have the same powers in like developer strength, developer clout, whatever that some of the more established communities in Canada have. Like, why not us, right? So that's my driving motivation. When that community starts feeding it to you and saying like, you screwed up, you fucked up, you did that, whatever, it's really hard to separate their frustration from them being right, from your ego, from like whatever, right? So you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore.
If you had to have the same conversations with these folks again, which I probably think you wouldn't want to.
I hope I'd never have to again.
Would you go about it differently? Would you do anything differently?
No.
Or would anything change?
No, you have to own up to your mistakes. It was my mistake. So the first thing that I did was I accepted the fact that it was my fault, right? And like to anybody listening and to any entrepreneur, if you go out there and you want to be the king, you want to be head honcho, like you have to understand that there's a counterbalance to that, right? And if you fuck up, it's on you. You can make all the excuses in the world, but even if it's not your fault, it's your fault, right? And if you don't accept that internally, you'll never be able to move on. If you're always waiting and blaming or doing something else, you're not going anywhere. You're going to be stuck and you're going to keep learning that same life lesson until you accept the fact that it's you. It's you. What could you have done better? Even if it's not your fault. COVID's not my fault, but I made a lot of mistakes leading up to COVID that when the pressure of COVID came down, my cards got exposed, right? So that's my fault. And I have to learn from that. And what I've taken from that is like into Shepherd, into Dundas, into the projects that we're doing right now. It's like, again, even that mistake was a blessing from God, because if I did not learn that then when I was doing a $15 million project, I would be so scared to learn it now doing $200 million projects or $700 million, which is what we're doing. And we're still going through a shitty market. So imagine I didn't learn those things and I was taking bold assumptions and I was betting on sales prices and I was doing whatever and I wasn't protecting my back end. Like, everything happens for a reason, but you got to be willing and open to learn, and you got to take responsibility.
Who was with you during this time? Did you have a supportive system? Did you have to go through it alone by yourself? You know, and what was your mode of reflection like? Like, we all have a process, for example, like giving you a small perspective. You eat food, I eat food.
Yeah.
I know you're eating food. I know I'm eating food. How are you eating food? You know, so,
Yeah.
so how are you going through that process of yourself, of reflection? Are you taking time off for yourself? Did you go away for a little bit? Did you talk to, you know, who was your support system? How did you go through it? I want to know about that process. How did you go through it, or how does somebody go through things?
My support system ultimately starts and stops with Marina, my wife.
Yeah.
She is like
She's
my
incredible.
rock. She's
incredible woman. Yeah.
I'm so blessed, but she knows when to give me space and when to like lean in. What I needed here is to go through it on my own. Like, you have to get to the other end by yourself. I read books and self-help books and like how to, like all that, like all of those tools that are available to you are there, but you have to get through it alone. I will say the one thing that helped me the most was I thought I could never look these people in the eye again. The people that, like, all I ever cared about was their money. I lost the most money and the most whatever in this deal, but I didn't give a shit about any of my stuff. Like, that was fine. That's on me. But these people trust me to give, and up to that point in my life, I have 10-year relationships with these people, and I lose for them. Like, that's so counterproductive to the relationship we have. The thing that, like, one of the major things that got me through it was actually, like, as they were giving me critical, negative feedback that I needed to hear, they're like, but we still love you. Like, you're still our person. Like, you're still coming to our house for Christmas or dinner or whatever. So it's like, you separate those two things and then you start to own it. Like, it always starts and ends with you owning the responsibility. And then, like, what could I have done differently? And the minute, like, all those things that I said I did wrong, it took me months to figure out what I could actually do right, or what I did wrong that I could have done right while I was doing that deal. And then you start hating yourself and you're like, you idiot, you should have known. Like, how could you not? But that is the process of learning, right? The school of hard knocks is the most expensive and most painful teacher that you have, but also the most valuable.
You've been in some powerful rooms. You know some powerful individuals, people that have done extremely well for themselves from a wealth standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a relationship standpoint, members of society. When you're around these individuals, and we talk about the school of hard knocks, what are some lessons you've learned that you can share from your own life, from being around individuals, from seeing things happen to other individuals around you? What are some life lessons that you've taken on for yourself by learning from others?
The most important lesson for me was regarding intimidation. Like, I used to think that I was only capable of small business, and that the billionaires that I look up to or looked up to when all I cared about was money were like a different breed of human than we are. You know, they do things differently, or like they're built differently. They're smarter, they're whatever. That's just not true.
It's not true.
The minute you meet these people, and you know this, like, you've sat in those rooms too, right? Like, the minute you meet them and you talk to them in person, you're like, you're just like me, you know, like, you'll watch, like, you lock your keys in the car just like everybody else, or like you forget that you have like toilet paper on your shoe or whatever. All real life things that I've experienced from people that I'm like, you're a god.
Yeah.
And then that experience or that life lesson is probably the most valuable piece of advice that I would give a new entrepreneur or somebody that's starting out, is like don't discount yourself. You are good enough. You know, like, you have it in you, and but for a few strokes of good fortune and you being prepared all the time, you could be that person, right? So, like, do not discount yourself, because if you discount yourself, it's game over. Your ceiling is set at where you set it. So that's, I think, every other lesson will stem from that. But the most important thing is that you have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in whatever you're doing more than anybody else, no one's going to hand it to you.
To add on to what you said, I've learned that just like how they're the same individuals as we are, their playing field is just a lot larger.
Right.
Number one. Number two, they want honesty and transparency, because they're always asking people from the ground up. They're trying to put the pieces together. And I've also realized they also don't know a lot either. And they're also trying to fill out the pieces just like how we are. And they're trying to manage their life like we are, and running here and running there. And, you know, it's all chaos, but it's a chaos in a very different world of theirs, which is the playing field. That's how I like to call it. You know, it's like playing baseball. We're playing in the playground baseball. They're playing in the major league baseball, you know? So the playing field, that's what I like to call it. The playing field is a little bit different. And one thing I've also learned of being around these individuals is that they're very inquisitive. They ask a lot of questions. They really dig deep into the questions, the points, even the smallest of the smallest. Oh, you made this dish. How did you put it? What recipe did you use? What ingredients did you put inside it? How was your prepping process?
And they're actually listening to your answer.
They're really listening to your answer. Yeah, they're really,
because they're waiting for their turn to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything you said, actually your points are better than mine. Like, to be honest, I completely agree with everything that you're saying. There's a quote, people often overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Yeah. Right. So you have to give yourself room to grow and time to grow. And if you don't achieve your goal, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It means that you're one step closer to, like, you know, one way that it shouldn't be done, or you're gonna have to pivot to get to, like, take a different path to get to where you want to be. You got to stay committed. You got to, like, that commitment is key. Commitment, consistency, that's way more important than like a flash of brilliance or a great idea or whatever it is. Like, that's,
and I've seen it, and I've really listened to some of the principles you share on your own stories and on your social media, because you share it with such transparency and you spell it out. And that's why I want to continue on in our discussion about Almega.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what made you have all this money now, you know, 8-figure exit? First off, big question, like, when you get this huge chunk of money in your hand, like, you're on top of the world, king shit, you know, your head doesn't fit through the doors anymore. What's the first thing you do? You know, what do you buy? What do you go? Do you just sit there? Or do you, like, you know, you just like shit on everybody else? Or
No,
I'm just, you know.
For me, I built like my MTV rap video house.
Bro,
Like,
your house is next level, bro. Your house, I think anyone that's ever seen your house, and you know what's interesting about you? You invite people to your home, man. Like, it's such a private.
What's the point of having a big house if you don't have people?
No, but what I mean is, like, okay, I've been to one other developer's house, and you're probably the second. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that it's such an intimate moment of someone's life, and you know, everybody in the world of more money you have, more private you become. You're not just welcoming everybody with open arms all the time, because you don't know who's gonna harm you or hurt you or take advantage. You know how it is, right? So fair enough.
That's
right?
a mentality.
That's a mentality. Yeah. And so you, on the other hand, right away, the first meeting we have is in your house. Now I'm thinking of, you know, I'm coming and we're having our first meeting in his house all together. Like, is he flexing? Like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? But man, once I met you, you gave me a tour of your house. You opened up the doors to everything. I was like, who is this guy? You know,
dude,
but that's
like,
you.
Honestly, the reason Marina and I built a big house was because we love our community and we love our people, and we did not have big central meeting spaces outside of the church.
I think it rivals Drake's house. I don't know. I'm just going to say. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Stop. It's like half the size. Yeah. What did I do? I spent my money on, like, I carved out a chunk of money. I had really good financial advisors and really good mentors who were like, listen, you can have your fun. Like, that's bucket A. Yeah. And then you need to do your next thing, or like protect your wealth. Like, and then that was bucket B. Bucket B is boring. Right? Like, it's literally like me investing in other people who I believe in, or like public securities or whatever. Like, that's just like whatever. And then bucket A was like spending on frivolous, but I still think it's a good investment, like building your own house. Like, for somebody that we probably didn't have that security growing up, you realize, like, the younger version of you, like, they play out in those scenarios. So I'm like, okay, well, I lived in small homes and we are always kind of like stressing the mortgage and all that stuff. I'm like, F this, I'm going mortgage free and I'm going to build like this thing. And like, I literally like blew my load on like this house. But the best piece of advice I got from one of my mentors was, he's like, if you've agreed to build this house, you take that money out and you put it aside. Yeah. And thank God I did, because like the world changed while we were building the house and I could have been stuck with like a half constructed house. Yeah. And then bucket C, which was like personal growth. What am I going to do next? One thing that I know you know, but I think is worth telling. Right after I got all that money, I actually went through depression, because it's like I'd been chasing only money for so long that when you get it, you realize that's not what I was chasing. And I didn't know what I was chasing. And I was very confused and very sad. So I'm like, okay, like, now what? Like, why am I not like the happiest person in the world? And it took me a long time to like work those things out, to realize that what I really cared about was achieving a goal. And my next goal is now to make this bigger than me, not just about me. And so that's why I went back into Almega. 3 major like things that go on in my mind when I say that. 1, like what's something I can bring my entire community along with? 2, what's a stable, secure asset class? You have to remember, I made all of my money in a very risky, volatile industry, and I was now pulling it out and I want to diversify. And 3, and this is personal to me and I don't talk about this often. So I'm like, was the first one a fluke or do I actually know how to do it, right? Like a lot of like 1 or 2 people, especially when my ego was so big, they're just like, buddy, relax. Like it was a fluke, like right place, right time. And I'm like, I can't argue, and I'm mad at you, but I'm mad at you because you might have like revealed something that I don't know about me for sure. I'm like, was it a fluke? Right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to come back. I'm going to build Almega up again, but now I have billionaire mentality and I'm not scared of the developers in the world. Like, not that like they're my enemies. They're actually a lot of my friends, but I'm like, there's a space for startup immigrant development company that's owned by the people that are investing in it, that like isn't just like one big family or a couple of people. Like, let's give it to the masses. Like, developers make a lot of money. What can we do if everybody owns it? So that's what I was trying to do. Like, those 3 things kind of converge together, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going into it. I'm going to build the biggest types of real estate that we can in the most competitive, or one of the most competitive markets in Canada.
And how do you plan to go about that? How do you plan to do it?
I think that there's things that people need to understand about the development world. You need a large amount of equity, and then you need to buy land from the beginning, right? So there's like 3 phases where money is made in real estate. 1, when you buy a raw piece of land, so think like something that was farmland before, and you convert the zoning. The art of converting the entitlement is a major value add piece, right? So normally what happens is a guy buys a piece of land, or a person buys a piece of land, they convert it into another piece of land, and they usually sell it to a builder. Yeah. Right? And there's a transaction that happens, profit is taken off the table, and then the builder then takes that piece of land and they're going to build it into something. Again, that's the second like piece of value add, or major value add creation events. And so then the builder takes that money off the table, and then the long-term owners come in and then they hold it, they operate it for cash flow. And that's the third and final piece, right? As a community, what we need to get really, really good at is being long-term owners of real estate. But because we live in a country where margins are very compressed, unless you buy that piece of land from the beginning and take it all the way through construction, so I'm talking like a 10-year cycle, you're not gonna be that guy, right? And what we're so used to being is flashy, right? So like, hey, I'm gonna give you a 3-year return, 30% return on your capital. Boom. Okay, thank you very much. And then I'm going to pass it on to this guy, and he's going to make another 30% return. And then boom, thank you very much. And then I'm going to sell it to you as a condo or a rental building or whatever it is. And you're going to hold it for cash flow, and you're going to wait it out. But most likely you're going to make the appreciation, and then you're going to be like, boom, thank you very much. And the cycle goes on. If we learn as a community and we structure it so that our money is protected and we are making cash flow every day, what people don't realize is like 1 unit is cool. 10 units, you're starting to be somebody. 100 units, the banks take you seriously. 1,000 units, you got generational wealth, right? But you can't do it alone. I haven't done a single thing in my life alone. Why would I start now? And even if I did, you know, part of the reason what I went through after TerraSen was like, nobody was there to celebrate with me. Like, all the people that invested obviously were happy and we all made money, but like my friends that maybe had nothing to do with the deal, I'm like, I still want success for you guys. I want success for Ron. I want success for the guys behind the camera. Like, why not? Like, we're all in this together. Like, again, God blessed me a little bit, right? But if I don't look back and I don't start bringing people onto the boat with me, honestly, I think I'm a piece of shit. So like, I don't want to be that way. I want everybody to come. I want to do this together. So how do we do it? We do it all, right? We buy the piece of land. We take it through entitlement. We take it through development. And God willing, we own the thing and we operate it either as a condo or rental or whatever, but we are the landlords. And we can piece it up. We can carve it up. We can do whatever we want, but we own it and watch it grow. And then you can refinance it and do it again and again and again. And yeah, it's boring. It's very boring. Yeah. But it's boring. It's very sexy in money terms.
You make it sound exciting, man. You got me pumped up. Yeah, I'm gonna buy a piece of land right now. You know, let's go here. You know? Now everybody gets a chance to, you know, understand and why I'm so fond of you, because when you share these ideas and you put these concepts together, I want to ask you a couple of quick questions before we conclude our podcast. The first thing I want to ask you is, who are some of your biggest mentors in your life that had a profound effect on you and who you are as a person now?
Mentors that two groups, like the renowned mentors, like people that everybody knows that I also look up to.
Sure.
And then there's people in my personal life that I've just been blessed to have met and have like given me experience in my start. So like the big people, guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger,
yeah,
massive, like
that.
something like, I feel like he is the every immigrant, you know, like, but he just took it to like next level. Very polarizing figure, but what Grant Cardone does with equity raising, maybe I don't agree with like some of the things he says, but I think the vehicle that he's built is very impressive.
Yeah.
Guys like Patrick Bet-David, that's kind of like also from a personal and like life, like how to deal with your life, like Michelle Obama. Like I know everybody sees Barack Obama as like the star, but like that backbone that she gives him, if you've ever read her book, like is very inspirational. Guys like Nelson Mandela, like those are people that I very much look up to. Gandhi, obviously. Fictional characters like Batman. And then personal people that I've met that I just want to like shout out on camera from the real estate community. Dory Siegel, who is my first boss at First Capital Realty. He is like an icon in the industry. Sam Reisman, who is the founder of Rose Corporation. One of his advisors, Norman Krafcheck. Those people were like, they took me in and they taught me when they didn't need to teach me. And that's very valuable. And it's part of the reason that I believe that you have to give back. Probably the most important figure in my life growing up outside of my parents was Father Angelos Sad, who is like the priest in my church and the one who helped grow it. And he's the one who introduced me to some of my first investors. He believed in me when like I was a kid. And then Dr. Megdi Neshet, who is, I'm best friends and co-founders with his son. We started TerraSent together, but because of him, I would have, and there's so many more. And my sincere apologies to everybody that I'm forgetting, but like, that's a good group of people.
And you know, my approach moving forward is anyone that I come across, I always want to learn one or two things from them, no matter who they are. It could be, you know, the person in front of McDonald's, or it could be one of my friends that I hang out with. And if I'm not learning something from them, depending on what they're doing, I keep changing up my circles accordingly, you know?
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
You are also like one of my mentors and somebody I look up to. Like what you've done and what you continue to do, like you inspire me. You allow me to grow and give me ideas on how to grow in ways that I never knew possible. And like being friends with people like you is exactly it. You switch up your circles as you grow and evolve. Not to say that you're giving up on the people before, but you just like, there's seasons for everybody in your life. And bro, you are on a trajectory that very few people are on.
Thank you so much, brother. And it goes in it. I call it the journey. I'm just on the journey, and I don't know who I'm going to meet along the way in this journey. You know, when you're watching the movie The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, and they're just on this journey and they're coming across monsters. They're coming across people who help them. That's the journey I'm on. You don't know who you're going to come across.
And everybody's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question. Knowing what you know now, if you had to tell the younger Basem, what would you tell the younger Basem? Knowing what you know now and where you've come far in life.
Honestly,
have more girlfriends.
Yeah. I married my first girlfriend.
No, I'm just teasing you.
Take accountability. There was a moment in my life where I used to blame everybody and I used to do whatever. The minute I started taking accountability for my life was when I started reaping the rewards. And don't be afraid of any challenge. Like, believe in yourself and go for it. These are life models I live by, but I have no regrets. Like the younger one, enjoy the ride. It's a pretty good one. Yeah. So
finish off this podcast. The biggest question I'm going to ask you is, who is Basem Hanna? What's the legacy you want to leave behind?
It is not a Basem Hanna legacy. If we can take people to new generational heights in one generation that it normally takes 2 or 3, if that is the legacy I leave behind as somebody who helped create that ecosystem, I'm a happy person. I'll die happy.
My friend, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here from Basem himself. Now you can see why I'm a big fan of his and fond of him, and you get a chance to, and there's so much more to him than you got a chance to listen today. Hopefully you get invited to his next birthday party like I will be. But thank you so much. Tune in this episode. Till next time.